Well, suppose you're an immigrant coming to the country of Canada and the federal government says, hey, listen, we're going to give you health care, but we're not going to give you gold-plated health care. We're going to give you what every other Canadian gets. Well, Alberta, Manitoba, Ontario, Quebec, Nova Scotia disagree. They've agreed to provide better care to immigrants than they do to their own people in some cases. So we're going to start by discussing that with Gideon Mammon. He's an immigration lawyer. Gideon's coming along with that one. That's Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. Don't want to live like a refugee. Refugees live pretty well. Gideon Mammon is with Mammon Sandalock, immigration law. And let's go back to October. Sure. The federal government says, hey, listen, we're going to change the rules as far as health care is concerned to immigrants, because up until that point, they were footing the health care bill. Mm-hmm. They're going to continue to foot the health care bill, but they're not going to give them what they used to give them in the past. Can you detail what it is that they're not going to include?
Okay, so let's go back to this gold-plated thing. First of all, we're not talking about gold-plated service for refugees. They're not getting anything more than what we're getting, that's for sure. This program has been around since 1957, and the whole premise is when we have refugees on our shores and we are awaiting to have their cases determined, we give them basic health care. Now,
what do you consider basic?
Well, they're allowed to go to the doctor, they're allowed to go to the hospital. Okay.
Okay, that's pretty basic.
That's basic. Now, because if they have a certain income level, they're also entitled to get dental care and eye care. Now,
dental care and eye care?
And this is how the government has said this is gold-plated, because you and I don't get that benefit.
Darn tootin' we don't.
However, if you are below a certain income level, you do get that sort of service, because that's just the way it is in the provinces. The ones of us who are working and who are doing okay, we don't get that subsidized care. So this is what refugees were getting up until June of last year. Now the government said, you know what? The federal government says we want to get out of this thing. We're now going to make a much leaner federal health program. So what they've done is that basically for countries that are deemed safe, all you get is health care and medical care, health care and, doctor's care and hospital care, only if you are going to be in an emergency situation, okay?
Okay, when you say safe, that includes countries like?
Hungary. Now, we know that we are recognizing certain people from Hungary as convention refugees. However, the government has designated to be a safe country. So if you're from a safe country, you get the most minimal of health care. So for example,
this is the controversy surrounding some of the Romans, for instance.
That's right. So in the situation of somebody from Hungary, okay, they're only going to be looked after if they have a condition that threatens public health. Okay, and that is the rarest type of medical condition. So theoretically, they don't get really any kind of other care unless their condition, for example, is tuberculosis or HIV or something that might be a threat to the public health. So, for example, if you have a child who comes with their parents from Hungary, who's here, who is insulin dependent, he does not get any insulin. If he comes and discovers this is a child discovers he has cancer, there's no chemotherapy.
Well, he doesn't get that provided by federal funds.
That's right.
Okay, but he's getting that care because some of the provinces have disagreed with the federal government.
That's right. So what's basically happened is Minister Kenney decided on his own to change the IFH, the Interim Federal Health Program, although it's been like that since 1957. And what he really did is to download these costs from the federal government down to the provinces. And the provinces are now saying, you know what, to heck with that. You know, these people are showing up at our hospitals, which we're funding. We have them in our waiting rooms. We can't turn away a sick child. We can't turn away a person who's been hit by a bus. We are going to look after them.
Well, a Roma who got hit by a bus would still be able to go to the hospital. So it's a sick child with insulin or on chemotherapy that we're referencing, correct?
The fellow from Hungary is going to be looked at, presumably, only if it's a threat to public health. And that's a problem. That's a big
problem. He doesn't get emergency care if he gets hit by a bus?
He gets it only if it's public risk. There's no emergency care for him.
Okay.
So this does not reflect, in my opinion, Canadian values. So if I were to be sitting in a hospital waiting for my turn at the emergency ward, and I see a kid coming in who's been hit by a bus, but he's from Hungary, no one's going to look after him. I don't think there's any Canadian sitting in that emergency ward who's going to say that makes sense.
No.
It just doesn't.
Totally agree with that. But the counter argument is that those health benefits were provided in Hungary. So can we take care of that child and send the bill back to Hungary?
Absolutely. You know, there's lots of really, really good ideas. I was actually talking to one of your producers here before, and they were saying, well, why can't, you know, if they get landed, why can't we send the bill for that? Terrific. But at that time, for example, right now, this whole thing is before the federal courts. One of the people there, for example, interestingly enough, is a fellow who was suffering from a detached retina. He needed surgery to save his eye. They refused him because he was a failed refugee claimant. His wife was found to be a convention refugee, and she is being landed, and she's including him in the application. So he's going to be landed here anyway. So the question is, you know, why are we allowing this guy to lose his sight when he is going to be part of Canadian society? How does that benefit us? It's so short-sighted, it's so mean, it's so cruel, it makes no sense. This should have been something that was the subject of public discussion, public debate. But instead, the Conservatives, they just announce it and we have to deal with it.
The flip side of the argument is the provinces who want to attract immigration will provide those extra benefits to them. So whether it's downloaded or not, it's the prerogative of the province to provide that, correct?
There's no question that health care is a provincial matter that the provinces have to take care of. And the problem is that it's the federal government that deals with immigration policy. So right here, from the province's point of view, is look, these people are your responsibility. You're the ones who signed the 1951 Convention on Refugees. You're the ones who are adjudicating these cases. You're the one that are taking 3 months, 6 months, a year to adjudicate these cases. You should be picking up the tab. So this is where the discussion
and they are still picking up the tab, as I understand it, for people that are being deported, even though they've gone through that whole process.
To a limited extent.
We got to take a commercial break, and we're going to come right back to this. Don't go away. An important subject here. Giddy Mammon is here, immigration lawyer. And Giddy, we ended talking about the situation from Hungary, for instance, and that would be the same as Australia or France, where they voluntarily come to Canada and they get very, very basic service health care. What about somebody from Afghanistan or Somalia or somebody who's not considered who is considered a refugee, legitimate?
So they'll get doctor's care and they'll get hospital care, but they will not get any drugs. So for example, if they need insulin, they need chemo, they're out of luck. No vision, no dental, no midwifery, no drugs of any kind.
So in the case of France, Australia, Hungary, or those things, is there a way that we can pre-qualify them so they don't get into the country if they have health problems?
Okay, we could. It'd be very expensive, and you'd see our tourism plummet. But we could theoretically.
We don't need medical tourism. We don't need people freeloading on the medical system in this country, do we?
But if you have somebody from France, let's say a couple who wants to come to visit from France, okay, what they do right now, they just get a French passport, hop on a plane, and come to Canada. There's no visa requirement or anything.
Right.
What you're proposing is that before they get on the plane, they have to submit to some sort of a medical exam. Why? Because we have no idea. Once they arrive in Canada.
Well, presumably, this is not a tourist situation. This is not getting on a plane and flying to Canada. We're looking at an immigration situation where they apply to come to Canada.
Well, that's not the refugee system. The refugee system, the way it is...
There are no refugees from France.
I understand. But the point is, you're asking me, can we somehow prevent these costs from being... can we prevent the Canadian public...
Can we pre-screen immigrants?
Well, we do. Anybody who's applying...
For medical reasons.
Absolutely. So any person who's applying for permanent residence has to go through a medical screen. Visitors do not have to go through a medical screen. So that means a French citizen could just hop on an airplane and show up at our doors.
Yeah, I get that.
So, for example, in Hungary, if you have a couple who are coming from Hungary, they say they're coming to visit, they're not going to be exposed to a medical exam. Once they arrive here, all of a sudden they claim to be refugees, and then you find the situation that we're in today.
Oh, so they learn how to abuse the system by flying over as tourists first. Correct? Well, am I wrong in saying that?
I would say you're wrong in saying that, because...
Really? There are no Romas that have gotten off the plane and said, oh, refugees.
No, that's what they do.
I know.
So
Well, that's my whole point.
Hold on. The refugee system works like this. We have the power to go overseas, go to refugee camps, and select refugees from those countries and then bring them here. The other way it's done is that those who arrive on our shores, regardless of how they arrive here, they can seek asylum in this country once they put their feet on the ground. And so that's typically how the Immigration and Refugee Board gets its inventory of refugee claimants. So a person coming from Hungary, a person coming from Iraq, a person coming from Afghanistan, oftentimes they come either with false documents, they come without visas, they come in the trunk of a car, and they come here and they say, listen, I'm in danger back home in Iraq, I'm in danger back home in Afghanistan.
I get Iraq, I get Afghanistan. Right. I don't get Hungary, I don't get France, I don't get Australia. These are people that are coming to abuse our system.
So France and Australia, I doubt very much you're going to get any successful claims from those two countries, but Hungary has shown that the Romas are being persecuted in Hungary. They have a legitimate refugee claim. Now, not all Romas can establish a convention refugee claim here in Canada, but many do. And so the question is, when a Hungarian child, refugee child, shows up at the hospital and is in need of, let's say, insulin or chemotherapy or some other life-saving drug, are we going to really say, oh, you're from Hungary, so sorry, we're not going to give you that drug. Well, if you're from Afghanistan, we will give you that drug.
I've got personal experience of people from Hungary, same circumstances. They tried several times to deport them and can't get it. Deported for criminal activity, too.
Sure.
So it's just unreal. Let's see what the public thinks about this. Gina Phillips. Gina, what do you got?
Hi, Pat.
Hi.
Yeah,
Good morning.
Good morning. We're sharing this story on our Facebook page today. A lot of people are spreading the message about Maddie Vanstone. She's a 12-year-old suffering from cystic fibrosis. Now, the Ontario Liberals do not cover the drug that costs her family $348,000 a year. This is a life-saving drug. She needs it to stay alive. Her father's job partly covers it, and as well as the drug company covers a little bit, but the family itself has to pay more than $5,000 of it a year. Now, many people look at a case like this.
I saw that case.
A month. You're absolutely right. Our viewers are looking at a case like this, someone who has grown up in Ontario her entire but small life, and wondering why now, when you see a headline like they're rethinking healthcare and giving more to refugees, why is Maddie Vanstone suffering? And a lot of people talking about this.
Okay. Gina, thank you.
You're welcome.
Kitty, thanks so much.
My pleasure.
I'm sure it'll be a discussion point in the future.
Oh, yes.
Kitty Manman is an immigration lawyer with Maimon Sambalek Immigration Law.